Our scripture for today comes to us from John chapter 20, verses 11 through 18.
But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus has been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they had laid him." When she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you had carried him away, tell him where you had laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not touch me, because I have not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them they had said these things to her.
Thank you, Charles. Ooh, perfect timing, Rain. Also, I like the accidental Italian Rabboni. So in 2007, the Washington Post did a little social experiment in the subway system of Washington, D.C. This is a CCTV, so it's a little grainy. The video goes on for quite some time, but it's that violinist is named Joshua Bell. Are you familiar with Joshua Bell? Of course. If you are in the know as far as classical violinist goes, that's like saying Yo-Yo Ma. He is a world-famous violinist playing a Stradivarius violin worth $3.5 million. He had just the night before sold out a big, I don't know, classical music concert. I was going to say the Philharmonic, but that just sounded like a musical term. I don't know what it was in D.C. But he had just sold out this amazing show, and he played in that subway for about an hour. And according to those who counted from the CCTV footage, 1,097 people walked past him, and 7 people stopped. He made $12 in that hour. One of the greatest violinists alive, playing one of the most beautiful pieces, one of the most complicated pieces on one of the most valuable and incredible violins, and 1,090 people walked past. And it is easy for us to look at that example and look down on those people, right? Typical humans are going to walk past the most amazing thing in the world because they're late to work. Man, wouldn't it be great if we all could pay attention a little bit better, right? And I'm tempted to do that as well, to just kind of be all judgy of people, that aren't we all stupid that we missed this opportunity right in front of us. But I want to give you all a pass today to be human, to be who you are, and to recognize that our brains are far more limited than we realize. I think we think of ourselves as somewhat infinite computer brains because, I mean, how do you think about your thinking? How do you think about your consciousness? Because your consciousness is your thinking, it's everything. So you think, I can walk into a space and I can notice everything that's important. I can force myself into noticing all the things that are valuable and important in this space. But my friends, let me let you off the hook a little bit. That thinking part of your brain, that part that sits up front, is about 10% of your total processing power. 10%. 90% of your brain is just keeping you alive. You've got lungs and hearts and cells to create and divide, and there's long-term memories, and there's all of these emotional responses and gut responses that you don't have to think about. That's the 90% of your brain, and that's on a good day. That's without you being stressed or sleep deprived or worried or in danger. Show of hands. Anybody here stressed, sleep deprived, worried, or in danger? Anybody? I know we've got some folks with young kids, so I know that somebody is at least sleep deprived in this space. That number gets even smaller. Your amygdala, further back in your brain, takes over and hijacks it. Hijacks that limited little 10% that you have to think in the front of your brain. So you're in good company in this space. Our prefrontal cortexes are a mess in this space. But as we heard earlier, there is life after mess. Yes. Amen. And like we said in the first week of Lent, this year we've been going through this series of becoming purveyors of awe. And we talked a lot about wonder and what wonder requires of you. Wonder is incredible because it breaks your preconceived notions, and it shakes the walls inside of you, and it gives you time and space to create new categories. You know, the first time you see the Grand Canyon, and you're just blown away by it because you could not conceive of a hole that big, and your brain is forced to create a new category for a hole that's that big. From that point on, you have the category now, right? Wonder is labor intensive. It's energy intensive because it forces you to create something new in your brain. And it's incredible, and it's transformational, and it's at the heart of our spiritual experiences, but it is costly. And when your brain is in crisis mode, it will literally block you from wonder because it knows that wonder takes a lot of resources. And so the part of your brain that's just trying to keep you going is like, we don't have time for wonder right now. We have time for survival and worry, and that's it. No wonder in this moment, please. And that has happened to me so many times this year. I've been so consumed with all of the worries and all of the time constraints and the deadlines that never seem to stop coming that I have forgotten to make space for wonder. I have treated wonder like it's something that's just going to naturally happen to me if I keep living my life the way that I'm living. And then I get surprised when it's been 6 months and everything feels gray and like the color has been sucked out of the world. And so I draw comfort from the story in our scripture today. I draw comfort from Mary. Now, Mary Magdalene is one of Jesus' closest disciples and friends. She is there the whole time. She is there at the cross. She is there afterwards. She is the first person that Jesus entrusts with the message of the resurrected Christ. She is the first preacher of the gospel. She is the apostle to the apostles. Unlike what Dan Brown would tell you, they weren't having a secret marriage with children and all of that. We don't want to go that far. But Mary is in Jesus's inner circle. And so she comes, and they discover at the tomb that he's not there anymore. And all of them think the worst. Because even though Jesus had said things like, after 3 days, I will raise this body, none of them took him literally, because that's not a thing that happens. People don't die and then 3 days later come back on their own. Like, even Lazarus required the power of Jesus to come back. But Jesus is gone. Jesus can't raise Jesus because he's gone. And none of us can do that. We've probably tried, and they probably spent a few days praying for it, and it didn't happen. And so the idea of a resurrection, there's just no space for it. There is no space for that new category of a thing that has never happened before. Mary is in crisis mode. She has had the worst weekend ever because she did not leave Jesus' side the whole time, which means she didn't sleep. She was with him. She watched him. She heard his cries. She saw it all happen. She saw his body go limp on the cross. She was there to take the body to the tomb, and she waited after the Sabbath that she could come back and prepare the body. Because she was also a good follower of the law, and she wasn't about to break the Sabbath by preparing this body on that day. And so when she sees that the body is gone, and the disciples see that the body is gone, and they all run away, and she's alone. She's alone in her sadness, in her trauma, in this moment. And she sees this fella just in the middle of this graveyard, and she presumes him to be the gardener. And I love that this is a common story in almost all of the Gospels, that the resurrected Jesus is initially unrecognizable. And ironically, if you've ever heard somebody use this as evidence against the resurrection, that this was like a guy that looked like Jesus, pretending to be Jesus, this is actually a great example of textual criticism, that you can tell that something is authentic when it's weird and when it goes against the point of the writer, when it makes the writer look stupid, or when it makes things look unclear. Because if the writers were trying to convince you that Jesus really did come back from the dead, the story would go that Jesus appeared and they instantly recognized him because totally that's Jesus, and he showed me his passport and we checked his fingerprints and it was him 100%. So the fact that Jesus appears to them in some form that is mysterious to their eyes tells us that it is more authentic. And it tells us that the writer is trying to tell us something about what Jesus was like after this. Or perhaps what the people seeing him were like. Because in each of these stories of post-resurrection, the people are grieving. They're fearful. They're stressed. They don't know if the authorities are about to come down on them. And they look directly into his eyes, but they do not see him. They see a gardener or a fellow traveler or just some guy. And I wonder how many times you and I look wonder directly in the face and we do not see it because our brain cannot handle what it might entail or the amount of mental load it would take to create some kind of new category around that. And we are so wrapped up in what we have to do next that we can't make space for what might be coming at us. But in each of these stories, and especially in today's, though their vision is useless, they never see him on their own power, by their own eyes, by their own act of will. It's only when Jesus reaches out with this characteristic act of love and intimacy, this very special bond between Jesus and that individual person. are the walls broken and they truly see him and know him. He did not ask Mary to puzzle out the mysteries of the resurrection. He didn't say, I told you so. I literally told you this like 3 days ago, what was going to happen, but you weren't paying attention as usual. He just says her name. And I imagine, and we can't capture this in text, but I imagine he said it to her in a tone that she was familiar with. You know when you hear your name spoken by someone that you love, and they say it in a way that only they say it? I imagine it was like that. And it just breaks through all of her weary brokenness, and it reawakens her to wonder, to new possibilities, to life after death, and to resurrection, and all that resurrection entails after that. You know, something that Darby said on Thursday has stuck with me at our Maundy Thursday dinner. You said that it's during like holy times that when you're supposed to feel holy and righteous and set apart and all that stuff, like that's when it doesn't happen. Like, okay, well, it's Lent now, I'm supposed to feel penitent, and I don't. It's Advent now, I'm supposed to be waiting for the Jesus, and I don't. It's Easter, I'm supposed to feel resurrected, and I don't. And I feel that in my bones. I feel like I am surprised by Jesus more than Jesus shows up when I'm expecting it. And I think it's because I try to force it. Like, this is holy time. Get ready for holy feelings. We have 35 minutes. Holy feelings now because I got to take the kids to Urban Air later, and there's no space for holy feelings then. But that's not how it works. There is no formula to get out of the rut that you are in. If you, like Mary, are feeling worn down and broken and fearful, and your amygdala is going crazy and your prefrontal cortex is all starved. So what do? If you can't force it, if you can't prescribe it, if you can't just do the thing and say the thing and get better, how do you find wonder? I think we do what Mary does. Mary just showed up. I don't think Mary was expecting to find Jesus. Oh, I know she wasn't expecting to find Jesus. But she still showed up anyway. And you showed up today. Some of you showed up online. Some of you are showing up in the future when you watch or read this. But you still showed up, right? You put on clean socks. Maybe. Some of you didn't put on any socks. But you came to the YMCA on a rainy Sunday morning, and you made space for your trauma to be interrupted by wonder. And sometimes, friends, without warning, something breaks through, and the resurrected Christ says your name. And he speaks to the inmost parts that only you and he know. I keep thinking back to that, not only the Maundy Thursday service we just had, but to that original Thursday, to that original final meal that Jesus had with his disciples. That meal that is so important that we do it every single Sunday. That in some ways we named the entire church community after this open table that is given to you that we practice every single week. But that original Thursday meal, in which I imagine Jesus was surrounded by such a flurry of emotional people. Some people there were scared because they knew what was coming. Thomas had said, "Let us go to Jerusalem that we might die with you." Peter was frightened. Peter said, "Let nothing bad happen to you. Nobody's gonna betray you. Nobody's gonna hurt you because I'm gonna be at your side." Judas had already decided in his heart that he was going to betray the one he loved. All of them had something going on inside of them that was occupying their brains. No one was thinking clearly. No one was looking for wonder or surprise. And then Jesus took the most ordinary things in the world, bread and wine, and he broke open the moment. And everyone knew in that moment that he saw them and that he loved them, truly, for who they were. Even the people who were about to deny and betray him. He knew them and he loved them, and they knew him and they loved him in return. And he broke the bread and he told them that as they eat the bread, they are receiving his very body, his self, his being. And as he poured the wine, he told them that this was his spirit poured out into them. And they ate and they drank and they were made new on that day. And the grace found in that chalice was far greater than their weaknesses. Because when Jesus poured out that cup, he already knew that each and every one of them would fail. He knew specifically how some of them would fail, and he poured it out regardless. Maybe he poured it out because he saw each and every one of their shortcomings, the way that they would miss the mark, the way that they would mess up, that they'd disappoint themselves and each other. And he said, that's fine. Their frailty did not factor into how generously he poured the cup around that table. He poured that cup out for everyone for all time with no strings attached. And here's the fun thing about wine. Wine is something like 80 to 90% water. And water molecules, as we learned in elementary school, aside from in extreme circumstances, persist. They just change form. They evaporate, they go down, they go up, they go down, they go all around, and they go on seemingly forever. And in that chalice that Jesus handed to his friends around that table, there were roughly, stick with me, 6 septillion water molecules in that chalice of wine. That's 6 with 24 zeros after it. Water is very small. And for the past 2,000 years, those 6 septillion water molecules have been spreading out evenly across the entire globe, such that every single glass of water you have ever drank in your entire life has contained water molecules from that cup. When we take communion in a few moments in this little plastic cup, you will likely drink somewhere between 50 to 60 water molecules that Jesus himself offered to his disciples. Every special drink that you have ever shared with a loved one, every desperate coffee you have drank to stay awake to finish this assignment, every last ounce of liquid you have ever had in your entire life has been a sacrament poured out for you. You just don't always see it that way. And the reality of those 6 septillion molecules is that grace is far more stubborn than your exhaustion. If those tiny bits of water have managed to persist through 2,000 years of empires and wars and every human tragedy in between, then the love of God is infinitely more resilient than whatever fear is currently hijacking your nervous system. You do not need a perfectly functioning prefrontal cortex today, friends, or a surplus of energy to receive this grace. You simply have to be here. Because the same water that Jesus poured out for his fearful, confused friends is the same water that makes up your tears, your morning coffee, and the very rain that is falling down on Pottstown today. Statistically speaking, 25% of those raindrops carry a molecule from that cup, for what it's worth. You are physically tethered to the night that he was betrayed and to the morning that he rose again, whether you feel holy enough to recognize it or not. So, friends, my prayer for you today is that you would not worry about manufacturing a sense of wonder today, because today is the day that you're supposed to feel it. Just trust that you are already soaked in it. And may you go out into a heavy world knowing that grace is literally flowing through your veins. And trust that even in your darkest moments, the risen Christ calls your name.